hey, every time I reach a peak of a mountaintop, right? I published a book. I've done, hundreds of podcasts or whatever the thing is, right? I got married. You're at like a peak and you're looking at the view. Well, what happens next?
Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. I'm going to be here today with Alex Terranova. Super exciting. And before I get started, don't forget to go to maxedoutman.com. Check out what we've got going over there. We're going to talk to Alex today, who is a men's coach. Also, it's cool that we have such a wide array of people to choose from. I have a couple of spots open. If you guys want to reach out, just shoot me an email at kd@maxedoutman.com. See what we've got going on at maxedoutman.com. So let me read Alex's bio, and then I'll have him fill in the gaps. Alex Terranova guides men to become the leaders their companies and families can be proud of. Alex is an executive and leadership coach and performance and success alchemist whose essence is steeped in ontological principles. We don't use big words around here, so you're going to have
Make
to...
it simple. Make it simple. Summarize it. Whatever you want.
You're going to have to explain some of that. He's the co-founder of Alex Terranova Coaching and Alchemy of Men. His leadership retreats, men's groups, workshops, and coaching programs support men in healing, growing and expanding from ordinary to extraordinary as leaders at work and at home. We love that. He's been dubbed the anti-excuses coach. I want to hear more about that too by Yahoo Finance and was named 40 over 40 in podcasting by Podcast Magazine. Since 2016, he's appeared on, hosted, or produced over 500 podcasts. So reading that last line, and this is where I just hand over this show to you, being I'm about 150 in between my two podcasts.
That's way more than most.
That's right.
That is like 140 more than the average person.
Isn't it crazy? Like that less than, I don't know what that number is. It's like a huge number only do one episode.
Yeah. Yep.
And then if you get to 10, you're like in the top 5%. It's because people don't realize that this is actually work, at the end of the day. But man, I'm so excited that you came on board. Thank you for giving me time today. I'm excited about this conversation. I think you and I align really well with kind of no excuses, wanting to help men and kind of, dealing with that kind of stuff. So if you can fill in the gaps for me, give me as much as your backstory as you want. I always love learning more about how people get to where they are today.
Yeah. The short version is I was an asshole. I think I can say that on your show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the short version. I was a kid who grew up and overcompensated for my self-doubt, lack of belief in myself, dislike of myself, with arrogance, overconfidence, and being a jerk, projecting all the stuff that I didn't like about myself onto everyone else. And I wasn't, I was fairly, liked, and I had a lot of friends, and I actually used to open bars and restaurants for a living. So I was in a perfect industry, drugs and alcohol and chasing women. It was good times, until it wasn't. And around my late, it's funny, I look at from 28 to 30, I feel like was my lowest period. And I say lowest, I was having a lot of fun, but fun like I was a college student, not fun like a man about to be 30. Drinking too much, chasing women, not taking my money or my life too seriously, which again, hey, no judgment, right? If somebody wants to live like that. When I look back, I was living like that because I was lost. I was confused. I was unhappy. I didn't know what to do. And the things that made me feel good were those, right? If I got the hot girl, I felt good for however long that lasted. When I was drunk, I felt good, right? I could avoid being with myself. And I got lucky. I just kind of got smacked in the face by God, the universe, whatever you believe, whatever your label is. And I woke up and realized I had like a vision of, if I keep this going, it's cute when you're 28, 30, right? You're a bartender. You can pull it off. You're managing bars, opening places, fine. But I saw myself at like 50. And I remember thinking, oh, it's not going to be cute anymore. I'm going to be that 50-year-old man hitting on 22-year-olds at the bar. And we make fun of that, right? Like, I mean, it's,
creepy.
Yeah. And I remember like thinking that and just being like, man, I gotta change something. And at the time I had no idea what I didn't know anything about personal development. I didn't know anything about men's work. I didn't know anything about coaches. And I just started going down an explorative route of what else is out there. So a lot of business networking, things like that. And all of a sudden I started meeting coaches, and at first I was like, these people are a joke. This is kind of,
they get paid to do this crap.
Why are they all so happy? How are they so positive? Like, I was just so not in that space that I couldn't understand how anyone else could be positive and think that they could actually kind of determine the outcome of their own life in a way. But you meet enough people like that, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm and that's really what happened. The short version is I eventually sat down with one of those coaches, and she, in a 90-minute session with me, had me realize that I'm taking me everywhere I go. So if I always have a bad boss, if I'm always dating the same type of woman, if I'm always having the same type of money problems, it's not, my boss, the women, my parents, the bank, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like a, moment where it just had me completely wake up to the fact that, wait, I actually am responsible for my whole life. And currently at that time, I was not taking responsibility for any of my life. So that's how that was about a decade ago. And that started my journey. I started it for myself, and then quickly realized, I want to actually do this with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So about August of 2015, as I started my kind of journey coaching other people, working with other people. And it's evolved into mostly men and men's work and men's retreats as of about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you had the epiphany?
32.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm 42 now. I was 32.
I'm 51, about to be 52 this December. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with one of my coaches the other day, and I was like, I've literally prayed for where my life is right now for like the last 45 years. And to be, part of me is like, I can't believe I'm 51 and I'm just now having this like epiphany, but at the same time, better late than never. But I look at that and say, man, what would my life have looked like? And I don't begrudge, I have an awesome life.
Yeah. But
to be back at 32 and to be able to change the mindset and stuff that I've had happen, I mean, even in like the last year, I originally started Maxed Out Man because I'm like, hey, I'm fit. I'm happily married for 29 years. I've got all these things to offer. I wonder if I can help other men kind of get here. And then to realize that the plan, and like you said, God, for me, it's God's plan. But like he was like, all right, I want you to do this so that you can learn all the stuff that you need to learn about yourself. Right. It's funny how that can transition.
Yeah. I was telling somebody yesterday, I was working with a newer coach. I was mentoring them, and they've started coaching. They're like 6 months in. They're really trying to build a business, and they asked me to mentor them a while back. And I noticed as I'm coaching them and mentoring them, I'm really coaching myself and mentoring myself. All of a sudden I'm like, I stopped doing that thing that I'm telling them to do. I should really go back and start doing that thing again, whether it be something for my regular life or my my professional life. I notice when I work with men around their relationships, talking to them about their how they're dealing with their partner, and I'm like, man, I got to get back to that. I'm not doing that. And I think that is some of the beauty of this. If you really, I think if you have integrity, you gotta do what you say. And I think there are a lot of people out there not doing that, right? It's for the money. It's for the clicks. It's for, there's a lot of polarity in the sense of
renting the plane, renting the Bentley so they could take these pictures and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Or even just these, there's a lot of men out there saying like, to be a man, you have to be like this. And it's like one way, which I always find is kind of ironic because those same men are also talking about like, don't be sheep and don't follow. And it's like, wait, if there's only one way, that would mean we have to, this doesn't make any sense. But I think that
don't be a sheep unless I'm the shepherd. Is that what? And nothing against lions over sheep, right? Like he's got a great following and does his thing and very successful at that. But that is fun. Actually, I've never really thought about that, but that is funny. That
that's not even. I don't know his. I've heard of that company, but I don't know his work. But that's a really common thing. Like men are like this, men act like this, men do this. Women do this, husbands do this, and hey, if it works for you, it's fine. But I think that what that does is it gives us a really small box to play in. Like this world is vast and expansive. And if you're telling me I have to fit in this box because that's based on who I am as a man, how much stuff do I miss out on? How many experiences, relationships, connections? And that's where I feel like I'm different in the sense of I noticed that for myself. For me to be a man, the cool guy, all these things that were identities that were keeping me stuck before I started to open up was I had no room. I had to go to a gym and lift heavy weights. I had to drink, you drink a certain way, you eat a certain way, you date a certain type of woman. You got to have a certain type. It was just, I realized at one point I was saying no to so many things because it didn't fit this identity. This made up identity that I had created or that the society conditioned for me.
It's like this mask of it, and it's a non-holistic approach to masculinity, right? Like I tend to project, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that stuff. I work out, kind of have an alpha male type personality a little bit. But at the same time, when you see me with my bride of 29 years, like I serve her, completely. Right. So like I have that soft side of me that doesn't fit that mold. Right. Like I'm supposed to be I'm the head of the household. You do exactly what I say and, all of that stuff. And first of all, I hang out with a lot of badass women and she's a boxer. So she beat the crap out of me. But like, it's that one of the biggest things, and you've probably experienced this by doing so many interviews and podcasts and all that. I've learned, I thought life was like, all right, this is who I am. I'm going to be this way. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
And by doing this, and like, I've had anything from my 92-year-old, 40-year pastor to a sex coach to like a guy that teaches about or talks to legislation about cannabis and like all of this stuff. But it's like so broaden and most of them are men, frankly, or talking about men's issues, obviously with Maxed Out Man. But it's broadened what a guy looks like or can look like. And it really just fits into whatever, like you said, it's like find that path for yourself. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I have the same experience. I've learned from men who are gentle and wise. I've learned from men who are like fierce warriors. I've learned just as much about myself from women, like not from how they tell me I should be, but I like to think of everyone we encounter as a mirror in some way. Because you and I meet the same person and we have a different experience of them.
Right.
So they're the same, but we have a different experience, which makes it about us. So I like to think I can actually learn the most about me in my relationships with everything else. If I'm having an experience with my wife and someone else doesn't have that experience with her, well, it's about me. What can I learn based on how it's kind of like ping pong, right? Like how that ball's coming back tells me about me. And it doesn't mean I think like it doesn't mean I need to change or be different, but it can be something I can get aware of and kind of play with. Like, oh, do I want to change this? Do I want to shift this? I think you'll appreciate this. I think it goes along with it. I read the other day that first marriage is 50% divorce, right? Is like the average. What do you think the rate of divorce is when those people get married a second time?
It's like 75%.
Yeah,
right?
It's like above 60%.
Yeah.
Now, when the people get married a second time and then get divorced again, and then they marry a third time, what do you think? Like,
It's got to be close to 85, 90, I would guess.
It's like up there in the 70s, 75, somewhere above that, right? And when I first heard it, I was shocked because I was like, man, you'd think like we're getting older, we get wiser, right? Usually as, it makes sense young people get married quick, get to, like, they don't have any idea what it's going to be like to have kids or the financial challenges, and then it doesn't work out. But you'd think, if you're getting married for the third time and you're 50 or you're 60, you would have figured it out a little bit more.
You just have two, it's like the first marriage, you bring a U-Haul into the second marriage, and in the third marriage, you bring in a U-Haul with a U-Haul truck. It's like it all just comes along.
Well, I mean, that's a great, you were speaking, like, it's almost like a metaphor, right? We bring ourselves to everything. So we keep, instead of actually, I think what most people do is instead of actually saying, hey, how can I transform or evolve to create what I want, either in a relationship or whatnot. What that marriage thing tells me is people are just going to the next thing, hoping to change the other people. I'll get a new wife or a new partner and then it will be what I want. And really they just find the same things over and over again. Which is
new
actually
wife,
really,
same me. That's the problem, right?
It's actually just really sad, know? And again, this doesn't have to be about relationship. We see this at work, right? We hear bad job, bad job, bad job. Every job's not a bad job. How come every job you get is a bad job? Or how come like you always have bad clients or you're always in a lawsuit?
Yeah.
If something happens once, okay. But if we see a repeated pattern, I think that's where those are the biggest places for opportunities.
Yeah. I do love the relationships angle. It's something I, right in my wheelhouse, but having been married for 29 years, we went into it with like, this is it, right? Like there's only two choices. Either you kill me or we stay married, right? Like, or you can be miserable. That's the third one. And we went through some serious challenges and have, worked on it along the way. But it's like, it's always like, how do we change? And I've talked about this on the podcast before. We've probably been counseling 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
From low, kind of just tune-ups. I call it changing the oil in your marriage. And they've been like significant to, just minor stuff. But like you find out new things about yourself every time. And it's like, oh, well, this is why she reacts this way. It's actually something that I do to create that. And, at our age, at 29 years, married, we're like, I can't imagine, like, why would you want to take that on? Starting this whole process over
again.
And we've had people that we've mentored in marriage that literally they've been married like 25, 30 years and they get divorced.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, you've invested so many years in this. Why don't you just figure it out? That, and no judgment on people that do get divorced. There's always some reason, but typically, like you said, it's about something within us.
Yeah. I don't know why I was thinking about when you were describing this. I was imagining, you move into a property, a house on a piece of land that you love. And over the years, it's going to start falling apart, right? It's going to need paint. It's going to need repairs, just the normal things that would happen, whether it's a car, a property, or house. And if you ignore it, it's going to continue to get worse to the point where it becomes one of those houses we drive by on the road that's just been abandoned and falling apart. And if you want to stay there, if you love where you live, and you have to actually put some energy into it, into cleaning it up, fixing it up. Just sometimes it's just like a fresh coat of paint, right? It doesn't need to be a whole thing. And I think relationships are like that. But as men, many of us have been conditioned that somehow it's a weakness. It's a weakness to get supported. I heard a friend say to me once that to ask for support or to ask for help as a man, it means you've failed, which is another interesting, like, it doesn't make any sense. I never heard of a man that went to war by himself. Right. You, if you want to go, overthrow something or take over something, you get a bunch of people to come with you. Right. And that's your army, which means you got supported and you got helped. And so, and even I think, like, even if we think of the most, some of the most masculine jobs, like a boxer, an MMA fighter, right? Those, it's not that they're inherently masculine, but they're that like primal man. None of those guys are in that ring. They're in the ring by themselves, but what do they got? 5 guys on the side that have been supporting them and helping them.
Yeah, and telling them and literally guiding them. Like my wife is a boxer. Like I said, when they get between rounds, the coach is there saying, "You did this right. You did this wrong. You need to do more of this. He's doing this. She's doing this. Whatever." And it's like it totally like they're almost like the tool of the coaches at that point.
There's something around, and this happens a lot in our world where for some people we make it okay, and then for others we don't. And so we do that if for a boxer, it's okay that you have all this support, but for an average guy, it's not. If we had this conversation with a group of men recently that were like, let's just say middle class, average guys, and we noticed they had this resistance to getting financial support, whether it be from their families or for friends, or there was this like, if I get financially supported, I'm like a failure. I haven't done it. And what we reflected to them was, did they notice that if they had been born into money and they had inherited a trust fund, or their father had a great business and given it to them or something like that, none of those people reject that.
Right.
a lot of the people that we look up to as very financially successful were handed a platform that doesn't mean they didn't grow it bigger, right? But they were handed a business, a large sum of wealth. And it's this weird, like disconnected mindset that we have that for some people it's okay. And it doesn't mean that they're weak, but for other people, we've attached this, I because I couldn't do it myself, I failed, or I'm weak.
Yeah. It's this weird thing about work ethic. I would think, this kind of blue collar mentality that pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that stuff. And I've been thinking about this whole term self-made man lately, and it's bullshit.
Totally
There's no such thing as a self-made man. And I've been asked to give a keynote later in the year, and we're going to be talking about that. And I want people to raise their hand who would consider themselves self-made.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask, okay, have you been homeless your whole life? Have you starved your whole life? Have you had anyone whatsoever? Like, it's so easy to debunk that idea that, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Did you build your house? Did you build your car? Right. Did you grow all your food? And I think there is something to say about like, hey, I built my business, or, I wasn't given a business, or I wasn't given a trust fund. There's a difference there, right? It's not a black or white, one or the other, but for anyone to think they've done it alone, it's silly. And it actually hurts all of us to think that, because we start creating that and we put that on each other. It's the same as the lone wolf, right? This lone wolf mentality. You know what lone wolves do? They eat scraps.
Yeah.
They have to stay up all night to look for predators. But a wolf in a pack, can take down the biggest buffalo. A wolf in a pack gets to sleep because they have the comfort and safety of the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
And I think even in that, you said it before, like, I think that we don't want a world, you used the word alpha before. I think this even gets us in a trap. I don't think we want a world with like alphas and betas. I think if we're in that world, we're already like disempowering ourselves. We actually want to create a world where everyone's a leader. Now, everyone is an alpha to a degree. That doesn't mean that every person has to be, I think of it as like a football team. It doesn't mean everyone has to be the quarterback.
Right.
But if the blockers don't block, I don't care who your quarterback is, Tom Brady or whatever. If the blockers just stand up and let the guys run by, Tom Brady is we would never have even heard the name Tom Brady if the offensive linemen just let the guys go. And so who's like the alpha right on that team? Is it, or it puts this hierarchical conversation in place that actually doesn't serve any of us. We all need to work together. And if we all actually become leaders at whatever our role is, we all do better, right?
Yeah.
If all the offensive linemen are leaders at their position, then the quarterback has a better shot. The receivers have a better shot, right? We all win.
Yeah. And it's that concept of servant leadership. I talk a lot about that. And even in our, even in your marriage and relationships and all that, if you're serving those that you've been placed in leadership over, that looks vastly different than if you lead from, you've probably seen that meme where it's got the leader sitting on the back with the whip, whipping people, pulling this big rock versus the guy that's pulling. He's the first one, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's like, that changes the way that you view leadership and that whole alpha male and all of that stuff. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of, that term alpha male. I want to be and this is kind of how I'm normally am. I want to be a leader who is, I used to run health clubs back in the day, and 90% of the time you would probably see me with one of those backpack vacuums and I'm the operations manager of this club, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now that all the housekeeping staff would work their asses off for me because they knew I wasn't afraid to do the same thing.
Yeah. I had the same. When I was running bars and restaurants, there were nights where I'd often be in like a button-up shirt and a pair of jeans, and my button-up shirt would be hanging over the dish rack, and I'd be in the dish like washing dishes because my kitchen was getting their butt kicked.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed help. And if I didn't do it, right, it was going to end up, it wasn't just that they needed help, but if that part of the ship went down, it was going to take the rest of the ship down with them.
Yeah.
So do I stand and watch my ship go down, or do I like roll up my sleeves and get dirty for a moment? And to your point, those guys killed themselves for me. Same thing, right? Like hop behind the bar, help a bartender out. And I think, I think we could do so much more of that. Like, are you a leader who's helping raise up leaders, or are you a leader who's trying to stay as a leader and keeping everyone down? We see this too in a lot of media. I don't know if did you ever watch Vikings?
I've seen the show. I didn't watch it religiously, but I've seen a lot of the episodes.
One of my favorite things about how the kind of Vikings would fight is the kind of our hero Vikings, the ones who are the leaders, would be the first ones to run into battle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They weren't like hanging out. When you see like an English king would be sitting on his horse on the top of the hill while his army went out.
Right.
And there was a clear, like, English kings had more of I need to keep everyone below me because I don't want to be overthrown or lose it was more of a fear-based power. Mm-hmm. Whereas the leader of a Viking clan, still his leadership was always someone could take him over, but it was almost like, if you can take me over, you deserve it. You're actually better for us. So I'm going to put my butt on the line all the time and show you why I deserve to be the leader and fight for my leadership and help everybody come up with me. Our whole clan or whole community would be better if that is happening.
Yeah, it's interesting that you pointed out early in your own story, and I've said this a lot, which is when you look at someone that's an asshole or jerk or power hungry or whatever, I always try to look and say, okay, what is their self-esteem problem? Right? Because that's all, to me, all bad behavior, or most bad behavior, is born out of self-esteem issues.
Yeah.
And is that something that you see? I mean, I feel like that's like almost universal with everyone, particularly I think in men in powerful roles or in leadership roles. It seems to be kind of this thing that continues to happen.
I read somewhere recently, and I think it's like an old kind of like a Lao Tzu, like one of those like very old, phrases like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that every act is either an act of love or a call for love.
Mm.
And it's a little oversimplified, right? But I think there's something to that when I was being an asshole, I actually really needed love, and I just didn't know how to get it. And the way I was trying to get it was attention. Right. Mm-hmm. If I was saying crazy things and people laughed or gave me their attention, it made me feel good for a moment. It's almost like a hit of a drug. Mm-hmm. Right. If I was moving through women, it was like a hit of a drug. It was like I felt good for a moment, but I didn't care about the wake that I was leaving.
Right.
And I think I see this a lot with the term like toxic masculinity. I don't really believe that any of us are toxic. I don't think a human being can be toxic. I think we can have behaviors that are hurtful. I think we can have behaviors that are unserving, but toxic implies like you would be sick just to be around me.
Right.
And that's not actually the case. When I hear the term toxic masculinity, or recently I've been hearing like people have been trying to bring toxic femininity, all I hear is, man, that person has some unresolved trauma. That person has some hurt that is coming out sideways because they really need something. And I think when we label it with like such a harsh judgment, we actually don't give each other the opportunity to heal or fix the thing that's going on, because we just write those people off. Oh, they're bad, they're this, they're that, versus what do they need?
Yeah, it's almost like broken masculinity, broken femininity.
Yeah.
Because I think anytime that we get, there's kind of this continuum in the middle. And I think, I'm not political, but it's almost like the politics thing. You have like these people that are so far on the left or so far, well, they don't really represent most people, right?
Yeah.
Like there's kind of this middle ground that if we all kind of stay in the middle and really see both sides, of feminine, and we'll bring it back to this femininity, masculinity, but there's like this brokenness that puts you into one part of that continuum or another. And again, I think it's a matter, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, we're not teaching boys how. No one is teaching boys how to be men. And like you said earlier, that can mean a lot of different things. But there are kind of some basic tenets to being a guy, being a man over time that I think kind of are not being taught. It's just, all over the board.
We have this idea, this like mythical idea, and especially in American society, that like it was kind of like born in the 50s and the 60s, like men work, women stay home with the family. And people talk about this as like a more conservative or traditional way. The ironic thing about that idea is it actually only existed for a tiny fraction of human history, like the 50s and the 60s. That for almost all of human history, everybody had to work, right? The men might have been out hunting, the women were farming, right? Or the women were making the clothes and taking care of the village while the men were building and defending. So the men, both people had clear roles and jobs. The women weren't like just sitting around holding babies, right? Right. The women, if the women did not contribute to the societies didn't work. They actually would fail. And that we got to this one moment in history in America where it was very like, oh, men do this and women do this. And it was very clear. And then somehow that got kind of, I don't know how that got like washed upon us, whereas like, hey, this is traditional or normal. It's actually so untraditional and normal. Traditional and normal is we all contribute. Now we might contribute in different ways, right? Like, it might make more sense for men to do certain things based on physical strength or size. It might make more sense for women to do certain things. But to your point, your wife is a boxer, right? She can do some things that a lot of men cannot do.
Right.
And so would it make sense to take away her natural abilities just simply because she's a woman? That doesn't make any sense, right? Don't we want her to do what she's good at and where her strengths are? And there's some men that are very like loving and nurturing. And wouldn't we want them to, we don't want those guys to be Navy SEALs. That doesn't make sense, right? Like, wouldn't it make sense to like utilize their strengths? And I think we like that. To me, like that's what I'm passionate about, is how do we look at each individual? And to me, this is how better parenting would go. How do we look at our children and nurture their strengths? We don't all have to be good at everything, right? We don't, right? The guy who's the hunter doesn't have to be good at farming, right? That's not, he doesn't have to be the shaman or the priest, right? They're different roles.
Right.
And so how do we look at people and go, hey, what are you naturally good at? How can I build that up? And now if you want to be good at something you're not, you can work on that too. But we don't all need to be able to do everything. And we also don't need to be put in, well, just because you're this, you fit in this, where it's not necessarily the right fit, right? If you're like a really gentle, nice person and we're looking for Marines, just to put you in that group because you're a man actually hurts the group of Marines.
Right.
It's not beneficial. So I think we all lose when we like throw each other in boxes without actually looking at us individually. And I think that's a way tougher game to play because there's so many of us now, right? It would have been easier when we were in a village of 200 people.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious because I've talked about this and kind of have my own opinion on this, but I think that the opposite side of this that we're seeing now is we're also making it not okay if you are in a particular box, right?
Sure.
Like, and that's where we're attacking certain femininity, certain traits. One of my friends posted a picture of the dad in the pool, absolutely launching his like 4-year-old son in the pool. And I just commented very innocently. I was like, this is why we need dads. And the point of that is that by and large, and I have no data to support this other than anecdotal, that is an activity that a father is going to do and a mother is not going to do, right? Like if you asked 1,000 people, I think you would get that same answer. But he totally took offense at it, and so did a bunch of his. I finally deleted it because all these women came up like mothers are just important and dads don't just. I'm like, shut up. First of all, this is why I got off social media completely, other than for business. But like, do you see that too? It seems like, like for me, right? Like I'm a particular kind of guy. Like, ironically, and this has actually created some problems of my own. I actually did build my own car and my house and my shop. Like, so, but at the same time, there are other things that I'm not great at. But like, I almost get to be afraid. And I think young men now are afraid too. I have a real heart. I'm actually kind of reworking some of Maxed Out Men. I have a real heart for these young guys. Like, it's like, okay, I'm a dude of a certain kind, and I'm really afraid because I don't know that that's okay to even be a guy like that, right?
I think what you're talking about is what happens when we don't allow for all of it, we allow for none of it.
Right.
And I think that's we're seeing this all over, right? If like one political party is bad, then the other political, but like everything gets kind of ping ponged back to the other thing. And so if it's like, hey, everyone can do everything, then when we look at someone specifically can do something better, it like we just get weird about it instead of this full kind of acceptance where, wait, what if it all could exist? What if it could be that, maybe more often than not, it's dads chucking their kids unsafely, right, into the air.
Oh, yeah.
And there are women that do that also, right? And it's not I think that also we live in this time too where there's no context. Everybody reacts to things out of context, right? I do this. I try to stay away from stuff online. And one of the guys I work with often will say to me, how come you're not, going at these people that are saying these things? And I'm like, I just don't see any purpose. If I'm, there's no, if I say, hey, like if I put in an opinion, all I get is their followers or their things just coming back. And now I'm just wasting my time with people that are sitting in their mom's basement on a keyboard, right. And I think that this has like been an unfortunate thing. We created these mechanisms to connect us, right? And we've become way more disconnected, and we are reacting to things outside of the context of which they're in. And I think it actually gets you more, like more followers, more energy to be kind of outlandish. Right. To if you took that stance of like, this is why we need dads, and you were actually serious, and you weren't, but you were, if that was like your whole model is like, these are all the things that dads do that moms can't do.
Right.
You would have a truckload of men following you.
Yeah.
That would actually really be serious about that. It's social media. I don't know if you know, you might know this, you're older than me. I think this is all goes back to, I think this is one of the biggest like mistakes that we've ever seen politically in the world. When we changed news from being a consumer, news used to be broadcast with no commercials, just to give you the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nixon changed the law to make it so that news could be a money making thing. So then all of a sudden, it didn't matter.
It kind of backfired on Nixon.
Yeah, totally. And it's not, I don't have an opinion. I don't know. I don't know enough about, right. I'm not here to judge Nixon or this isn't even a political conversation. It's just like we made a political decision to go from news from being public broadcasting and didn't make money to now news is entertainment. Right. And so now it's all about generating money. So now it's not news, it's entertainment.
Right.
And social media, which was supposed to be about connecting us, actually also became about money, right? Because Facebook, and it's all about money. It's not actually about connection. And so now it's more about how do we get us angry, pissed off, motivated, passionate, drive up all our emotions. So we just have these reactions and we're just like throwing up our reactions onto each other. And it's all unintentional, right? I don't think I don't think Nixon was like, oh, look how this is going to play out in 2024. We're going to be a mess. And just like, I don't think the social media people were like, oh, this is going to really mess with like society, gender, masculinity, people coming together. But I think all these things it's so layered, right? Our masculinity is so layered. Our relationships are so layered. I don't know how we get out of it besides like actually being nice to each other and kind of learning to like get more connected to our emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean it's a scary time. I mean the last time, and I'll make a comment about social media, but the last time I remember this like America coming together at a grassroots level was actually 9/11.
Yeah.
And after that, it's just completely, and, whatever about the political side of 9/11 and all that stuff. But like, we were fairly united at like, okay, this common enemy and all that stuff. But it's like, that doesn't happen anymore. It's like, I don't know how we recover. I'm pretty nervous about it, honestly. But to your point about social media, about 2.5 weeks ago, I made a decision at the encouragement of my coach to get off social media. I'm still there, but I basically use an app on my phone and my iPad, and I block social media from those two devices. So I get on my desktop and I have multiple brands and businesses. So I go in and just check my notifications on the business.facebook.com. And that's all I do. And I was looking at my phone the other day, you kind of get those like screen time phone on your iPhone. And I had saved 11 hours. Yeah. And what my coach and I talk about is that those hours are not just 1 for 1. You almost get like a 4 to 1. Like I feel better. So like, let's say 40 hours, right? I feel better. My mindset's better. I'm happier. And it's beginning to rewire my brain. Like I'm starting working on a book and my creativity is better. I can think better. I can read longer. Like it's nuts. And the side story of that is I don't scroll through the news feed, but I happened to see a post from a friend of mine and it was negative. I thought about that for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, I'm going to have to put like a block over this part of my screen. But it's just like, it makes them so much money to divide us that we can't even, like I had a conversation on the podcast with a gay man married to a very conservative gay man.
Yeah.
And so we had this great conversation that in normal life, I live in Montana. He and I are not going to have that conversation, but it was so open and we're completely opposites on, just in terms of lifestyle and all that. But it's like, we wouldn't normally get those. And I'm supposed to not like that guy, right? Yeah. I can like the husband. I can like his, right. I can like his husband, but I can't like him because he's liberal, right? And I'm conservative or whatever, right? It's just nuts.
Yeah. When you say it's like, I think this is, look, part of the reason I'm sure you are doing what you're doing and part of the reason I do what I do is because I don't actually think that I can have an impact by like running for office or doing something like that. I think that we have systems that are so hardened almost that, I think most people that run for office probably started in a really positive, I want to help. But I do think that essentially we're people on the ground, right? We're with other humans. We actually can make a difference. When I host a retreat and we have like 25 men sitting around a fire and we're talking about
naked with bongos, right? That's
definitely not naked.
Sorry, that's what people think that men do at men's retreats.
So we do often have a drum. There often is a drum, but definitely not naked. And look, there are men's retreats where those are not fine.
Whatever floats your boat, right?
We have one of the activities we do at one point is we have this belief that how can you support your brother if you don't know what your brother believes and you can't support his belief, like in terms of faith? So we do this exercise where all the men share their belief and their faith. And there's no like trying to change convince anyone. It's just sharing and listening. And at the end of what we often find is we have men that don't believe in anything, right? That we're just here and then we're gone. There's no God, there's nothing. And then we have men that are, we've had Jews, Muslims, and Christians that are very, very devout to their faiths. And then people that are about energy and whatnot. And at the end of that exercise, what happens every time is almost all the men are like, wow, we're all so similar, regardless of what they believe. Right. And they all are accepting of each other's beliefs. No one's beliefs are actually getting in the way of anyone else's. And they see that we can be, that I can, if my friend is a Christian and he wants to, and I know that about him, then my job as a friend isn't to necessarily believe what he believes, but to support him in his beliefs and him to me. And that makes us, again, all better. And then we all actually get to live the lives we want because my life doesn't infringe on his and his doesn't infringe on mine. And I think that like those types of that work that we're doing, and it's my hope, right, that we send those men back into their lives and they're more accepting in their communities. They teach other men to be more accepting. They teach men to like be more curious, to ask more questions and understand why someone believes what they believe. And then all of a sudden hopefully we have more people going, wow, I thought my neighbor was whatever because he's this. And I actually found out we all just like want to be happy. We want to feed our families. We want to take a vacation. That just because he believes whatever he believes, I'm safe over here. Like nothing's, he's not trying to change me or take what I have. And I think that's our job. I just believe like if we can do that a little bit enough at a time, I just have to believe that there's a ripple that can make things better.
Yeah. I mean, that's, and I totally agree. And it's interesting because each of us have a different opportunity, and whether we're like doing this at a higher level or just your average guy at your job or church or in the community or whatever, it's kind of all of us to come alongside of each other. One of the things that's been really kind of with Maxed Out Man is I'm focusing. I've traditionally been like, all right, you're 40 plus, right? Like you're my demographic, right? But it's become, I went on a retreat and over the course of this weekend, I did a business thing and then I did a retreat, and over like 4 days, I had 12 different conversations and 11 of them were with men under the age of 30. And 9 of those were about marriage and family. So it's like, hey, here's a light bulb. And like, they were genuinely interested in what I had to say and offer and my experience and all that. So I'm like, all right, well, clearly I need to reach these younger guys. And like, for me, from a marriage standpoint, I want to get there. I want to make their first marriage their only marriage, and have it as awesome as my marriage is. Look at 30 years later. Okay, you're 25, you're thinking about getting married. Let's look at you 30 years later and see what that marriage looks like. But we all have this conduit to be able to reach men and to teach men, how to be the man, and our tagline, right? How to be the man you were made to be. Right. And that looks different for each man. There are certain aspects, servant leadership and, taking care of yourself and not being an asshole and, all of those different things. But I love that you have a particular way of doing things. I have a particular way of doing things. And then the thousands of other good coaches, right? Not the guys we were talking about before that are there kind of for their own thing, their own edification. But yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, the thing you made me think of just now is there's two. One is like integrity.
Mm-hmm.
That integrity is not integrity applies to each man uniquely, right? And I think of integrity as almost like, if we have a ship, right? The integrity of the ship is that the ship doesn't sink, right? It doesn't have any holes in it.
Right.
The hull has integrity. It holds and it floats. And that all of us as humans are we're gonna get some holes. We're gonna get some dings and some stuff, and some water's gonna come in. When we do that, that's like, hey, we lied. We did something we don't believe in. We didn't speak our truth. We said we'd be somewhere we didn't. We were late. All these like little, bigger things would be, you cheat on your partner. That may be a bigger thing. You steal from your job, right? But we all have these like little infringes on our integrity. They're like these little holes at the bottom of the boat. If we're giving attention to our integrity, a few little holes, we don't notice that much, but a few more holes, and the boat is actually taking on water, and it takes the same amount of energy to move that boat forward as it, but it goes at a slower rate because it's taking on water, right? So we're using more energy to move slower. Now, if we don't pay attention, we take on more water, whatever. Eventually, we're using all of our energy. We're barely moving to the point where we sink. And if we are men living in integrity, then we're constantly looking to clean up the hull of our ship, patch it up, clean it up, say our apologies, do our forgiveness, give our forgiveness, clean up the messes we make. And then our ship sails further and faster with less energy.
I love it.
Right? Like that works for all of us. We all want that, right? Why do you want to use all your energy to barely move? Right? You want to go further and faster, easier.
Right.
But for that to happen, we have to take responsibility, full responsibility for our ship. We can't be like, oh, that iceberg over there did it, or that guy did it, or wait, no, it's our ship. We gotta clean up our hull. We gotta do that. And then it actually makes our life better. So taking full responsibility for your life, living from integrity makes your life easier, better, and smoother, and helps you get where you want to go faster.
Yeah.
But we don't live in a society, and we don't live in a world really that thinks like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, I think to me, that's where I look is like, hey, is the work someone's doing helping people with those two core things? Are they telling men it's other people's fault, right? It's the feminist or the this or the that, which maybe it is or it isn't. I have no idea, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help if we're kicking the blame. It only serves us to actually take responsibility for our own ships, the ships of our lives. And so to me, that's like my core. That's the core work I'm doing is getting guys in touch with their integrity, getting them in touch with full responsibility, and then letting them steer that ship wherever they want to go. And one of my favorite things to say to people is, look, I know a lot of things. I know a lot of truths, but those are my truths. And I'm not here to give you my truths. I'm here to help you find your truth.
Right.
And that to me there's a red flag when I see someone else saying this is the truth and this is what you need. Because even if it is a great tip, just because it worked for them doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah. This is what works for me. It may not work for you or whatever. And it's funny when you would use the ship analogy, because they literally say, the integrity of the whole has been compromised, right? Like that's a great analogy. And I've talked about this before on the podcast, I think, but there's a song, it's a Christian song, and it says, "Dear younger me, it's not your fault." And I hate that line, And I like the song, but I hate that line because I'm like, it's probably 100% your fault because that's how it works, right? Like if you don't take, if it's, and I say this, the good news about it being your fault is that gives you the control to rectify the whatever decision you made. If it's
100%.
someone else's fault or completely outside of your control, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because like this is just how it is. You have no ability to affect change in that. And so I love, and the integrity piece is so important to that. And it's not an integrity a lot of people think about in terms of an external thing, like I hurt this person or didn't do this for this person, but it really is an internal thing. Like I did my workout today. I ate right today. I was kind to my wife, and I had my mindset work or whatever those things are. But it's such an important key.
I think an integrity, I think when you're doing integrity right, it like actually messes with you. And I'll share what this means. Like when you're when you're living in integrity, it's like having a compass in your mind at all times. So you're saying, I want to go north because this is the kind of man I want to be. So for instance, I go to a networking group once a week. I go into the bathroom before the group starts. I go to the bathroom, I wash my hands. As I'm walking out the door, I throw the paper towel to the trash can and it misses. There's no one else there. And I have a moment where I'm like opening the door and I'm like about to go back to the meeting. And I pause and I'm like, oh man, damn it. And I go back and I pick up the piece of paper and I put it in the trash can. It's so dumb, right? It's like one piece of paper. It's fine. There's somebody who's like, who gets paid to clean up all that stuff, right? I can make all the justifications in the world. But my integrity, part of being the man I want to be, says I want to leave the world better than I found it. I want to leave people with value. I want to have a positive impact. So if I am just leaving trash on the ground when I could have just as easily, it's not like there was no trash can and I had no idea where to put it, right? To be in integrity with the man I say I want to be, I had to go pick that up. It's the dumbest, it's so silly, right? But to me, if I'm doing that, then when I actually make a bigger mess, I'll clean that mess up too, right? If I'm willing to do pick through the little messes, the bigger, it's all, it like speaks to who we are. If you say you're going to work out in the morning and you're like, nah, I don't feel like it. I guarantee you when your partner wants to talk to you about something important that feels hard, you're not going to do it. You're going to be like, I don't feel like it. Or when you got to do something at work that feels hard, you're not going to do it. But if we train ourselves to, as often as possible, right? And again, we all miss, right? There's times where we all get our whole messed up. But all of a sudden it becomes, I was in a situation with my wife and we got an argument about something, and we don't argue too often, but we got an argument about something and she was upset at me for something I said. And I remember sitting on the way home in the car and I was like pissed at myself because I knew she was right.
Yeah.
I knew she was right. It wasn't about that we disagreed on something and who was right about that. It was like the way I said it was like not nice. And the thing that pissed me off, that I was mad at myself, is I was like, I'm not committed to being that guy. I'm not committed to being the guy who treats people in his life like that. And so it was this, like, the compass in my brain was like, we're going left, man. You said you wanted to go north. We're going left. Yeah. So you got to get us back north, which means you got to go apologize. You got to go clean it up. And I don't think you don't get there in 1 week. We create this by getting really clear on the man that we want to be in the future. That thing I started with, where I said I could see myself at 50 and it was going to not be pretty and it was going to be lame, was I then reversed that. And I said, who do I want to be at 50? Who do I want to be at 60? What's the kind of man that I want to be then? And then can I start aligning my life to, like, can I start sailing my ship in that direction?
Yeah. And that's, I'm at 60, right? Like I want to look and see, based on where I'm starting, where I've come, you know, and now get to 50, 51, 52. And I'm stoked to be 60 and to see how far I've come. And yeah, I love that, because it's exactly what I do. The idea about the trash can thing. We were hiking on Saturday, and someone had dropped a Kind Bar wrapper on the trail. And I mean, and this is like backcountry Montana. These are not those kind of people. And so what's interesting is kind of this twofold thing. First of all, I picked it up and stuck it in the backpack because I'm like, this just doesn't need to be out here. But then I actually made a conscious decision to say, I'm 100% sure that person didn't just throw that thing on the ground.
Yeah.
They probably had it in their backpack and it fell out. Like, I have no contact with this person, but I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt in my mind to not say, these people suck. I can't believe they would throw that on the ground, right? But I find myself doing that all the time, which is like, you miss something. I try to like pick up, if you're going to pick up your trash, and there's an extra on the ground, pick that up. And it's such like you said, it's kind of dumb. It's like each incremental step to becoming and staying the man that you want to be. Each one of those things is an integrity piece that if they're not all firing, you're going to really struggle, like you said, for those big pieces.
Yeah, we're building it's like building a building or a pyramid or something, right? We got to start at the bottom. And if we don't handle the foundation, the bottom layers, we skip those or we do a lazy job on those, then the higher we get, the more unstable that structure is going to be. And ultimately, as we get to the higher place, we're going to suffer the consequences, right? Where it's going to be unstable, it's going to fall, it's not going to be able to support the weight of whatever we want to build on it.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I love what you said too about the trash wrapper, because it reminds me of a practice I do in traffic, right? I live in San Diego. A lot more traffic than in Montana.
Although a lot of those Californians have moved and they're the problem now.
I watch Yellowstone. I love it. I know all about this problem. I love Yellowstone. It's great. It's everything. That's all I know about Montana.
The joke is we kill a few less people where I live than we don't have a train. We don't have a train station or whatever that is. So.
Oh yeah, where they drive. Yeah, where they drive. So, but something that you're reminding me of is it's so easy to get pissed off when we're driving, right? Like we have no idea what's happening. Somebody cuts us off and we immediately think like, oh, we could have been hurt or we're in danger. And so we react. We might not even realize we're reacting from that we could have been hurt or danger, but we're having this reaction. And something I started practicing a while ago is reminding myself that I have no idea what's happening in that car in front of me. That person could be rushing to the hospital because they just found out their partner's in labor or their mom is dying. I don't know that they didn't just get fired, right? I don't know that they are, who knows, right? They're on the phone fighting with their partner. But that most of the time, somebody's not going, ooh, I'm going to cut this guy off. I'm going to really piss him off, right?
Yeah.
I don't think any of us are doing that, right? Even when we've been the one to turn out a little too soon, we misjudge it. We're not actually trying to like screw the other person. We're more likely thinking about ourselves. And if we all gave each other a little more grace, like we took the benefit of the doubt that you took, that, hey, I bet they didn't do this on purpose. What would that change in all of our daily lives if we all just said, hey, I bet this person isn't doing this on purpose? And then what if we also gave ourselves that grace? And I think men really could use this where, so many of the men I work with, when we get them to open up, they talk about their internal conversations and how mean they are to themselves.
Yeah.
A guy like doesn't close the sale or messes up something at work. And I have one guy that I'm like, in my mind right now, and he shared with us that he's like, you fucking idiot, you suck, you're a failure. Like, these are the things that he's saying to himself when he messes up at work. And how is that guy supposed to live a happy, fulfilled life if that's his internal dialogue? And if that's his internal dialogue with himself, when something happens to him, that's what's going to come out on somebody else.
Yeah, and usually you would never use the language that you use to yourself. I mean, not like, cussing. I'm saying just you would never say the things you say to yourself to most other people in your life. And to be that harsh, Michelle, my wife, and I, we have this conversation a lot because she's really hard on herself and she's a perfectionist and all that. I'm like, and I always give her the line, if you could see yourself the way that I see you, you'd never have a problem with self-esteem, because she's an absolute rock star just at everything she does.
Well, she's also puts herself in, as a boxer, the margin of error for destruction is so slim, right? We're not all usually playing in that tight of, right? If I mess up,
I do want to full disclosure, she is a hobbyist boxer. She's not like a professional boxer, right? So,
but if she's boxing, right, if you're boxing, I don't know if she spars, right? But if she's sparring and she
with 21-year-old men and she's 51.
Yeah. So if she makes a mistake, the consequence is like getting punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
I would say 99% of us, if we make a mistake, it's not life or death. It's not physical injury.
Yeah.
It's more like self-esteem, confidence, a little embarrassment, some rejection. And yeah, if you're if you are a combat fighter, if you're in the military, if you're working with very dangerous equipment, yeah, a mistake is costly, right? It's we got to be, but I don't know that it helps. You never hear like a sniper cussing himself out, telling himself he's like an idiot. Those guys, if you actually look at they have to be as calm as can be. And I might even argue the same about a good boxer is probably internally really calm and still. It's externally, that's their calmness and stillness is what actually allows them to be move so gracefully and swiftly and quickly.
Yeah, it's funny because when you're a boxer and especially amateur, and because they just don't have the experience, you try to time what's called the adrenaline dump. So like you're prepared, you've been thinking about it for a week, you've been training for it for however many months, and you're cutting weight and all that stuff. But you want to time the adrenaline dump so it happens actually before you step into the ring. Because what you see a lot of amateur, but we actually went to some fights the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and you can see it, right? They're all just like crazy going, and then that's round one, and then round two, the adrenaline dump has happened in round one, which you want it to not happen in round one. You want it to happen before, but then in round two, they kind of get more into their rhythm, and you'd be like, all right, well, there's the skill, right? There's the footwork, there's the, combinations, and there's that versus like, haymakers and all that stuff that you see these guys making. So, and with the sniper, military guys have systems, right? Like there are very specific systems that you go through. I'm kind of a systems guy. So like when you put yourself in situations, if you can kind of walk through a particular system thought process, it tends to help with some of that, some of that stuff. But yeah, the self-talk stuff, I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. I'm really guilty of it. I'm working on that. And what I find is I find more joy and contentment whenever I do this. And the other day, Michelle and I, we work out together every morning. She was doing a circuit. So it's a high intensity workout. And I told her, I'm going to be like, I'm going to try to get you to think of yourself while you do this workout the way that Donald Trump thinks about himself all the time. So I was a ridiculous cheerleader for her, everything, like the whole time. Like I'm working out, but I'm watching her and I'm giving her tons of encouragement. I asked her later, I'm like, how did that feel? Even though it was completely over the top ridiculous. And she goes, it felt really good to have that cheerleader. And what that teaches, the idea is it teaches me to do that for myself, to give myself that encouragement and give myself that teacher. And I use Donald Trump because, it's like, my doctor said I'm the healthiest best ever. He's never seen and I'm telling her, I've never seen someone do a circuit this good, all this stuff. So, because that's like, I want to have that confidence, I don't want to be a narcissist, but I want to have that confidence that he has, right? Like, there's something to be said for that level. And obviously part of it is a act and it's a character that he plays and all that. But yeah, that's
there is something to like, right. There's somewhere in the, can we like ebb and flow in it, right? If we always have that, right? If we're always, I'm the best.
Yeah.
then I never get to mess up either, right? I can't learn from my mistakes. There's the consequence to I'm the best at everything or I'm super great, right? If she actually believed this or you did or I did.
Right.
Then when I mess up with my wife, when I say something that's not nice or mean or whatever, then I would never actually own that because I'd be like, that's not me. I'm like perfect.
Yeah.
So there is like this beautiful ebb and flow that I think we want to be on, where can we turn on our kind of can we turn on like our turbo boosters
Mm-hmm.
and really believe in ourselves when we need to? And can we have the awareness to go, oh, wait, I'm not perfect. I did also mess up. But in the messing up, not then flip it the other way and go to the extremes of how bad I am. Just go, hey, you know what? I messed up. This is a learning opportunity. Challenges create opportunities. I think, conflict in relationship is actually what creates intimacy. If everything's smooth and good all the time, we're just super comfortable and we're not growing and we're not challenging each other or stretching each other. But it's such a fine line, right? Because we want to have that confidence. We want to teach it to our children. But we also want them to be able to pause and go, you know what? Like, I'm not the best at everything, everywhere, all the time, all at once.
Yeah, because then you just get like, again, you're kind of a narcissist. It makes me think of golf, right? I used to play a lot of golf. I don't play much anymore, but golf, the what a lot of golfers will say, especially, guys that are like 9, 10, 15 handicaps, they will say it's just that one, it only takes one good shot to get me to come back the next week. And keep in mind, you're like 80, 90 shots in a round.
Yeah.
Right. But it's that one drive, that one chip, that one putt or whatever to where, okay, I'm going to come back and try to do more of that. And I almost think but to have the confidence to come back and say, I'm capable of doing it at that level, but I'm incapable of doing it at that level all the time. But I'm going to continue to strive to be a little bit better, today than I was this round than I was last round or whatever. Right.
Yeah, it's great. I never thought about it from a golf perspective, right? We hear about it in baseball all the time, right? If you're a great hitter, if you get 3 hits out of 10, right? If you reach base 3 out of 10 times, you're a great hitter.
You're great if you're great to the degree at which you're not good.
Yeah, totally.
not perfect, right?
Yeah, right. If you can be good 30% of the time, you're actually excellent in this thing because it's so difficult.
I love that. Yeah.
But we don't have that. We don't relate to ourselves as that. When I'm working with clients or I'm mentoring other coaches, it's like, man, you don't have to get hired every time. You don't have to close every sale. What you got to do is keep going up to the plate and keep swinging over and over and over again. And yes, if you keep doing that, you're going to likely hit the ball more. You're going to close more sales. You're going to get more clients. You're going to build your business. But what we know for sure is when you get in a slump or a valley or a challenging period, if you stop or you quit, you'll never overcome that, right? You only need that one hit, that one good shot to get you back in the game. And then sometimes we like explode from there. I think we have these illusions that our businesses or our lives are these just like upward trajectories.
Yeah.
Every time, one of my favorite things for myself is to think about, hey, every time I reach a peak of a mountaintop, right? I published a book. I've done, hundreds of podcasts or whatever the thing is, right? I got married. You're at the peak and you're looking at the view. Well, what happens next?
Yeah.
I gotta go all the way back down. And I have to go all the way back down before I pick whatever my next mountain is that I'm going to climb. And that down and up part usually kind of sucks.
Right.
Now we might enjoy like what we're doing or the journey, but I mean, you've been married a lot longer than me. Like that's the majority of our relationships is the down and then the up again. There's pinnacle moments, but whether it be in business or relationship, those pinnacle moments are those are the minority experiences of our lives. And the down and the back up is the 90% of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, I think I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you all day. This has been awesome. But I think that's a great place to land, just looking at your life from those ebbs and flows. And from an entrepreneurial standpoint, a friend of mine named Derek Halpern put out this graph, and he said, what people think, it kind of showed this up and down. He's like, what people think entrepreneur life is like. And then he's like, what it's really like. And it basically was like this, right? Like the whole thing was just scribbles and all that stuff. But that's kind of like our life too, right? Like there is no real static ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's kind of an oxymoron, but there really is no like this is the way that it goes. It's always highs and lows and everywhere in between, and I think that's often. So how would we get in touch with you, follow you, learn more about you if we want to do that?
So my website is alexterranovacoaching.com. The retreats I host are alchemyofmenretreat.com. Instagram, inspirational Alex. And yeah, I'm available on all those, there's no bots running those for me. It's me.
VAs, right? No,
we have no VAs. I don't know when you're going to put this out. We have our last retreat of the year coming up in October outside of Austin, October 17th. We're about half full. We usually have about 20 to 25 guys. We're about half full for this one. And then we'll have probably 5 retreats in 2025. It's some cool stuff. It's about 3 days of looking at who you are as a man, who you want to be as a man. What are the constructs that made you who you are? Is it working? Is it not working? Connection, brotherhood, getting pushed out of your comfort zone, some cold plunging, some fire circles, some breath work, some deep like awareness work. A lot of healing, a lot of growth.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure we put this out in time to get that push going. All right, Alex. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting this conversation be like the entrepreneurial journey.
I love it's those are the best kind.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.